Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time.
If you want a textbook definition of the word cranky and cranky fan, you should have heard me Friday night, Grump.
Giants, I was almost dreading this day because I knew we were gonna have to talk at length about someone that you didn't want to, and to rehash some old Harry Potter jokes you still don't understand. But instead, the Giants made even bigger news. I think like 3 hours before we're recording this.
Yeah, we got lucky. Usually we record on Monday nights to record on a Tuesday, but I was on a work trip Monday night, and I was like, "Hey, Grump, let's just do this Tuesday when I get back after the Nick game." So good thing we did, because once in our life, we're now going to actually have timely news for you. So that's good.
Yeah. So all right, let's jump right into it. Russell Wilson. I'm not really breaking any news here. I'm just gonna kind of go with the news that's before me right now. I kind of tried to peruse for the latest stuff right before we hit record. I apologize if this is not up to date, but what we know right now is that it's a 1-year deal worth guaranteed $10.5 million, but it could be worth up to $21 million with, I assume, incentives and hitting milestones and things like that.
And the initial, when you first hear that, you're like, "Well, that's a lot of money to spend." But I was looking at, the salaries of starting NFL quarterbacks. I believe he is still just about the lowest contract of a quarterback that's not still on his rookie deal. So, don't let the number be like, "Oh my God, we're spending so much for a guy past his prime." But like,
Wait, which
it's
number
a
are you
real.
talking about? 10 and a half?
I am talking about is 10 and a half.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at, all the other numbers in there, it's still a pretty decent deal for a 1-year deal relative. I mean, it sounds, a couple of people were texting me tonight about like, why are we spending so much for a quarterback, for a guy for a short term? I'm like, we're not spending a lot. I think we've done a pretty good job of upgrading, obviously upgrading the talent right now. It might still be incomplete for a quarterback room, but we're not spending, you know, not busting the cap, not impacting other things we need to do on this team.
No, I mean we'll get to Jameis Winston in a little bit, but the combined minimum salaries that they are spending on those two is still it's less than $15 million. That's less than most starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's
So I mean we're really not spending a lot of money. I don't think money is
right.
really an issue here.
No, I think it's just knee jerk reaction. People, when they just hear a number, it just sounds big. Like, even when we re-signed Daniel Jones, like $40 million. Jesus H Christ! But it's like, we did it on the show. That made him like the 14th highest paid quarterback at the
Mm-hmm.
time. It wasn't like, oh my God, this guy is now setting new standards for what quarterbacks are going to be paid going forward.
Right. We don't really know what the performance escalators are to bring it up to $21 million. Like Pro Bowl could be one of the major incentives there. Um, you know, All Pro is usually an incentive in there too. So if he hits those things where we're spending that money, we don't really have a problem. We have a good season going here.
Mhm.
That being said, it is a 1-year deal. So I mean, I don't know. Give me your let's just talk about Russell Wilson, 37-year-old quarterback coming off a year where he played. Missed the first, what was it, 6 weeks last year due to a calf strain of some kind or something like that. Justin Fields did do well without Russell Wilson. Like record wise, they went, I think 4-2. But the offense transformed under Russell Wilson when they made the switch. I mean, in raw numbers alone, like I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I'm a massive Steelers fan and I watch those games. I know this stuff inside and out. Probably should have done that research for this episode, knowing that Russell Wilson was a possibility, but I didn't. But I can tell you that, like, I think like they were averaging something like 16 points a game under Justin Fields, and then ballooned up to like 25 as soon as Russell Wilson joins. He went something like 5-1. They did drop like the last 4 games, or 4 games at the very end of the year. But they're winter games. You know what I mean? There was like a snow game against the Browns, lost to the Ravens, the Eagles, the Chiefs.
Well, that's 3 of the 4 teams that were in the championship games, right?
Exactly. And then I think they lost the last game of the year was a technically meaningless game against the Bengals. Maybe it was meaningless. I don't know. They had
I,
already clinched a playoff spot by then,
I
though.
believe so. It was, yeah. Well, to answer the question that was buried in there somewhere, my initial reaction, it kind of ties into what my expectations for this season are and what I need from this team going forward. Um, I don't have playoff expectations. I don't have Super Bowl expectations. I also don't have it's this year or bust for this entire regime. And I think a lot of people are like, we either make the playoffs or these guys are gone, and desperate moves have to be made. I think, based on what this offense has been the last couple of years with Daniel Jones, with post injury, his unavailability to play, the ultimate benching for the future, and playing second and third string quarterbacks, we need to have to start off a competent offense, an offense that we feel can score touchdowns, not light the scoreboard up on fire, not win shootouts, not be the greatest show on turf, none of that stuff. We need to have to start a baseline of competency. And for the last couple of years, we've not been a competent offense. We've been a broken offense, and that is cascades across the whole team. It makes the defense work harder. All these different things. So we need to bring someone in immediately to make this offense competent. And Russell Wilson will at least make this offense competent. And at least we can start from there. We'll talk about Jameis. Jameis is a guy who has not been a chosen starter since Daniel Jones' rookie year. So we know when we got him the first, I will get into that later. But we needed somebody who can just be competent. We don't need greatness. We need competent. And I feel with Russell Wilson, before at some point, the shine on him is gonna go away, and he's gonna have the same, drama and behind the scenes issues he did in Seattle and he did in Pittsburgh and wherever. But for right now, for starting the season, I feel there's a sense that there's a quarterback who can make this offense at least work. Not be great, but just work.
Um, I agree with a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we covered this, right? It didn't really matter what the future of the Giants were doing. They need to see this offense function. It needs to work.
Mhm.
This has been an imbalanced offense for a number of years now. We are so heavily like any manner of function for this offense has really come through either the big play or the run game. And the run game, I don't think, can even maximize itself without the threat of a real passing game. And I don't know if that's the offense. I don't know if that's the offensive line. I don't know if that's Daniel Jones. I don't know if it's a lack of weapons. I don't know what all the contributing factors, percentages were. But regardless of that, we have decided that we're keeping the offense because we kept the offensive coordinator, which is basically Dable. So we're ruling out that it's the offense that's preventing the offense from doing well. We've already addressed the offensive line, I think, last year by getting 5 competent starters across the line. And I think before people started dropping like flies, that was functioning well enough. It was functioning, not saying that they're, 5 blocks of granite or whatever.
Yeah. Good job.
Thanks.
It was
You know what I
fine.
mean? You know what I mean? Like we've addressed the weapons thing, right? Like they drafted Malik Neighbors last year. They've brought back Darius Slayton this year. So they're kind of they're attacking all of those other spots. They haven't upgraded the offense, I don't think. They're keeping the same offensive coordinator, but everything else they're trying to upgrade to make functional. And they're mixing, youth through the draft through I don't want to say that. That's not true. I don't know that yet. We're hoping that they're continuing this pattern of mixing in youth through the draft and veterans. It looks like and youth free agents. This is not a youth free agent like we've seen with like Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland and even to an extent Darius Slayton. He's only like 28 years old or something like that. Those are the major contracts we gave out, right? Am I missing anyone on a big contract?
Those are the ones right
Yeah.
now.
Okay. Okay.
Even Slayton, I wouldn't even consider a big contract even.
No, I would say it's market value, but it's it's
Yeah.
the splashier signings. Um, this is not a young guy. This isn't an athlete. You know what I mean? Like there is a this Russell Wilson and the Russell Wilson that played at MetLife Stadium in 2012 are not the same player.
Not even close. But we're not paying for that guy, and we're not have expectations of that guy either.
I don't know, and I think that fans shouldn't either. You know what I mean? On 1 year deal, you're not looking for a guy who's going to um, he's not
Like,
going to be running like he used to. I mean, this is going to be mostly a pocket guy, but I do think that I don't think that this is silly. You know what I mean? I don't know how much Russell Wilson really moves the needle for me as a fan in the vacuum of this year, right? Like in the vacuum of enjoying the 2025 season and are they going to the playoffs and how fun is it going to be to watch this season? I don't know how much he really moves the needle for me, but it's certainly, I mean, beyond the compared to last year and the last 5 years, like I'm not going to do that. But I do think that this is kind of
I
the
think there's
smart move, right? Like,
yeah, I think there's one thing to be like excited for the offense and just not dreading the offense. I think we're in that middle ground right now because last couple of years has been an offense to kind of dread, especially once the injuries started.
oh, for
We
sure,
we
yeah.
we spent you know months the last couple of years just dreading watching this offense and watching this team because it was broken. There was nobody running the offense of any competency at all. I'm sorry, Tommy DeVito, but you're not an NFL quarterback. Um, this again, it's kind of like the analogy of like an umpire or an official in basketball or football. If you don't notice him, that's good. And I think Russell Wilson to be a quarterback where you don't notice him as much for being incredibly incompetent or incredibly great. He's just going to be running the offense. And but I also think that the fan perception of Russell Wilson, it's almost right now of like, well, let's wait and see, are we still drafting a quarterback or not? I think once we decide, because if we do take a quarterback at 3, or if we move up, or if we move down, or if we wait to Saturday to get that quarterback, that is what almost every Giant fan is going to be, locked into and revolving around. When will rookie X become the starter? If they don't draft one this year, I think that all of a sudden, I think you're going to see two camps with Giant fans. I think Russell Wilson can, drink the fountain of youth and all of a sudden be really good, or oh my God, why do we have Russell Wilson? So I think it's going to be a little bit of a lightning rod, but I think that perception thing is going to be really formed once the draft comes and goes and we have a third quarterback on this roster.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I do think, though. I think that Giants fans are going to notice Russell Wilson. I think I'm not sure if I like totally was. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what you were saying, but like, I mean, like, I think that he's going to make Giants fans pop a little bit. I mean, we don't know the schedule yet. We don't know what week 1 through 5 is going to be. Maybe it's the brutal gauntlet
Well,
of games. But I do think right away we're going to see some downfield competency. You know what I mean? Like Russell Wilson is
no,
not afraid to air it out and connect pretty well. He's going to
yeah.
test one-on-ones. It's going to look different. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, let me kind of preface that a little bit. What I was trying to get at was like, I don't feel, if we have an Aaron Rodgers, for example, every throw, every game is going to be micro-analyzed and become a talking point
I see.
on
Yep.
Stephen A. Smith and on the fan on Monday, and the feedback we get from this show and everything. And we'll probably be talking a little more. I think someone like Russell Wilson is, in spite of the fact that he's a Super Bowl champion, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, he's a celebrity, all of that stuff. I think he's going to be kind of like how Kurt Warner was with his team before Eli came here. Like similar accolades in his career, but we didn't, obviously it's before we did this show, but we weren't as Giant fans kind of breaking down every game of his as, you know, godlike or get rid of this guy type of thing. And I think that's how he's going to kind of slide in here.
I see what you're saying now, and you're absolutely right. Like it's compared to Aaron Rodgers, who I think now is officially off the table. Um,
Let's just, address that before we move on, that if they decide to go for another short-term quarterback like that, then it's time to get the psychiatrist up to 1925 Giants Drive and really check the heads of the people running this. I mean, I can't see any possible way that you would have Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston,
And Tommy DeVito.
and Tommy DeVito, and maybe even still draft a quarterback for the future, because none of those four guys are going to be around. Those three guys are going to be around. Four guys will be around most likely in 2026. So
yeah, right. I don't know what's going on, so I didn't want to rule it out entirely, but I think we can officially shut the door on that. That should be the truth. But in what that means is kind of where I was going with this, is that like there is a clear drop off in talent there, like and a straight to side by side football only analysis. Like Aaron Rodgers is head and shoulders above Russell Wilson, even right now, even though he's I think like 4 years older.
I disagree.
You don't think so?
I think Aaron Rodgers is washed. I really do. I think looking at a lot of his the advanced stat numbers in him, and just like average throw downfield, the fact that he simply refuses to take a hit. He threw.
That's definitely true. Him.
He throw. There's plays like I'm just going to throw it away just right off the bat before anything, wasting downs and stuff. I think he's finished, and I think somebody's going to overspend for this guy, and he's going to be, I think, terrible this year. So I don't think there's that much of a difference. I think, honestly,
head and shoulders is probably wrong. You're right, but I do think that one is probably worthy of the $21 million escalator as a guaranteed minimum, and the other is got to have it as an escalator. Kind of say it like that, like
okay.
And I think that's fair. But also, and again with Aaron Rodgers, I'm basing this entirely on the last year and then everything before it. He's at the point now where each year is a completely different story. We have no idea what we're getting into, because when it goes, it's just gone, and it's that fast.
We've seen it with Peyton. We've seen it with everybody. You lose it really fast.
Yeah. So you're right. But that being said, I think that I don't know. I mean, I think it does indicate that there's still a drafted quarterback coming this way. This is not a complete plan, but I also think that this gives them the flexibility to I don't know, do whatever they want with that in the draft. Like, we keep hearing that this is not really the draft for quarterbacks. Next year is the draft for quarterbacks. I've shared my feelings on that. I'm not going to rehash it, but the point is, if they feel that way, they can feel that way. They don't have to draft someone this year. If they think that there is a bona fide guy that they're going to get next year, and they're going to get 2 first-round picks and trade down and whatever and get all this capital to guarantee that they're going to get him and he's a year 1 starter, then they can do that. They can do that. Whatever. My feelings be damned. That's not the point. That's not the point. If they want to wait till day 3 to get somebody, to day 2, someone that they truly believe can be, molded or whatever, they can do that. If they want to trade down, they can do that. If they want to trade up and get Cam Ward, they can still do that. All of these options are completely on the table. They are not cornered into making any decision now, because, and I kind of want to make this transition towards the other piece here. They've addressed the quarterback position almost completely. You know what I mean? Like I said, if you're perfectly okay, again, in a vacuum, going into a season with Russell Wilson as your starter, Jameis Winston as your backup, and Tommy DeVito as your optional quarterback 3, if you even want to have one of those.
Sure.
So,
sure. And even more so with the expectation of this team.
Yeah.
I mean, if this team was a team that last year made the playoffs and as playoff aspirations and even potential championship dreams, you think about it. But where we are right now, I'm completely fine with this room.
Yeah,
but it's a short-term solution, all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have some theories here, but here's where Jameis Winston comes into this.
Okay.
Jameis Winston signed for 2 years, $8 million. This is a backups quarter contract through and through. This is averaging $4 million a year. That's quite literally less than Drew Lock got last year from the
Yeah.
Giants, who was on a 1 year, $5 million deal. So Jameis Winston never really screamed to me the starting quarterback from the moment I got the news. So now,
Yeah.
you have Russell Wilson as a 37-year-old quarterback. He did miss 6 games last year after re-aggravating a calf strain. You have a very good option to pop in for a couple of games and not torpedo a season. You
And with
also have someone that's probably going to compete with Russell Wilson in camp, right?
I think there'll be maybe in the beginning, maybe a competition, but I don't, again, you don't sign player X for, 10, $11 million and player Y for $4 million and you really expect them to compete. I mean, I think that the thumb is really tilted on Russell to start.
Yes, he's getting the starter's contract. So yes, the thumb is on that scale. But I mean, Russell Wilson is evidence himself that in a competition, a coach is going to take whoever wins the competition. Russell Wilson earning that
Right.
job as a third round pick over highly paid Matt Flynn.
I just think that, when you bringing a new quarterback, reps matter in training camp.
Oh
Reps
yeah,
matter. And so to me, you say, oh, it's an open competition. That means that the guy who's not the start, who's not you're never a starter yet, you're allocating reps more equally among two guys where, if you kind of say Russell Wilson, he's our starting quarterback, he's going to get those majority reps, get more into the offense and things going forward. So I don't know. I mean, it's possible that there's an open competition and I can open, but if it is, I think it's going to be relatively short.
I mean I agree. I'm just saying this is a nice fit, these two guys, and Jameis Winston bridged over 2 years. Again, we don't know contract detail. I don't know contract details. Maybe they're out there and I don't have them.
I,
On
you know,
Jameis Winston, I don't know if he's got like an out in the deal next year or anything. I don't know if that's come public yet. But 2 years. I mean, again, we go back to the drafted quarterback. Let's talk about this. Even
well,
if the Giants draft Cam Ward, Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback on week one. Your thoughts? Give me a percentage on the validity of that statement.
100%.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
100%.
So
I think this is, is a multi-tiered plan with it. I still believe they want to draft a quarterback. And now I don't think anybody has the patience to kind of suffer through a quarterback's rookie year. And again, this is 52-year-old Cranky fan saying that, who's so used to rookies not being successful in rookie years, and having to suffer through rookie seasons. Quarterbacks who are rookies have played a lot better in the last 10, 15 years than they did previously. But I definitely think they are setting up a rookie, whether it's someone is like a plug and play guy like Cam Ward, or maybe a guy, a day two or day three guy they like, that needs some seasoning and needs some development and some time holding a clipboard. I think you're not forcing anything. One thing, just to go back to what you were saying about the different contracts. Jameis Winston now has been a backup for 6 years. He he is a backup quarterback, and I think giving him the second year as opposed to Russell is a 1 year. If these guys really are a bridge, and you draft whoever, let's use Sanders as the median of, Ward being unlikely to trade up, and maybe not as likely to draft someone later on down the thing. Russell Wilson's role is to be a starting quarterback. He hasn't been a backup really in his career. Um, his job is to do the job this year as a starter and then move on. Jameis is now accustomed to being a backup. He knows his role. So I think there's a much greater likelihood that he would be on the team in 2026 because, that's his role. And, it could be a backup for 2 years. So I think that's why they structured these salaries, these contracts the way they did for these two guys. Like, if let's put it this way, if we need to re-sign Russell Wilson for 2026, I don't think it's I don't think this general manager is making that decision, to be very honest.
well, I kind of want to get into that in a little bit, but I think the idea of having your 37-year-old who's the accomplished starter. Be your starter. You've got this guy who's a probably a backup quarterback at this point in his year. I think the last time he was a starter was 2021.
Yeah, but he hasn't been a starter by choice since 2017 or whatever Daniel Jones' rookie year was.
2021. He re-signed with the Saints and was named the starter in August over Taysom Hill.
How long did he start for?
The entire season.
He
2021.
he started that whole season.
I'm pretty sure over Taysom Hill. Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Regardless, he was named it in August.
We're still talking 4 years ago, though.
No, I agree. I'm saying
Yeah.
at this point in his career, he's a backup. And this is the perfect kind of backup contract. Again, just strictly talking football, strictly talking numbers, strictly talking plans.
Yeah.
This is a guy who can come in here who's not somebody you want to trust with the wheel of your car. You know what I mean? They're just absolutely famous for having the Eli level numbers without the Eli level wins. You know what I mean? Got the huge number of pass attempts, yards, receptions, touchdowns, and just as many interceptions, but with no wins to back it up. This is what separates that. You know what I mean? This is the difference between, maybe just being reckless and someone who is willing to take chances. I don't think Jameis Winston is willing to take chances. I think that he's reckless.
I think he's reckless too. I think he's a guy.
I think
he's a guy
coaches think that he's reckless.
He is a guy that how many years later never outgrew the fact that he's the most talented guy on a college football field, and he can just, I have the talent over these secondaries and defensive backfields where I can just throw it anywhere, and I have NFL receivers around who are going to catch it, just beating out talent. And I don't think he ever got out of that mindset where I can just, and even if I throw a pick, who cares? I have such a great offense I'm working with. I'm such a talent level. I don't think that was ever beat out of him being in the NFL.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, this is a guy who is definitely a functional backup quarterback, and he's the perfect kind of person, perfect kind of player, and this is the perfect contract and the situation to learn the offense this year, be the backup to Russell Wilson, play a few games if you need to because Russell's 37 and might get hurt. Then you carry that offense over to the next year and be the backup for whomever you've drafted this year. Now you have a premium veteran backup quarterback who has a full year knowing the offense, is probably not really competing for a starting job, though he probably wants to. But he's got to know a guy drafted the year before is definitely starting over him, and you got him for $4 million next year. It's not going to be breaking the bank. You've got your rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, whether it's the first year or the second year of that deal. I think that this is the perfect plan, the right kinds of players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that you really, really, really wish it was anyone other than him. And I'm not saying that he was the best option for this plan, but he was certainly one of the options for this style plan. And I agree with the plan.
I mean, if his name was Joe Blow, I'd be perfect. I'd be like, this is great. I think they're setting this room up perfectly. But I can never separate the player from the person. And
I don't think anyone would ever expect you to either, though.
No. And I mean, again, I know the public has been snowed over by, oh, this guy will be fun.
That's stupid. I don't even want to discuss that.
It's retarded. And I'm sorry for all you PC people, but fuck you. It's the guy is Draymond Green, where he's a despicable person, but he's got a big personality, and it's like, oh, that's Draymond. That's Jameis being funny. He's not. If we want to go in, I had a whole soliloquy lined up Friday night when I found out the news, and then when I saw the contract, and then tonight when finding out the Russell news, I'm gonna spare all you good people because you all know how I feel about Knowles, and you know how I feel about the one I probably hate the most, and it's Jameis Winston next to Charlie Ward. Jameis isn't an anti-Semite like Charlie Ward was, but I'm not going to go through the rant every week and every time he throws an incomplete pass and every time he throws a pick, how much I hate his guts personally. We all know that. Fine. I'm going to do my very best to keep that off of this show going forward. I'm going to try to be as objective as I can about him. But, if we're talking about him as a football player, he reminds me at this point in his career like a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick was. Remember what Fitzmagic was? He'd come in off the bench, he'd win you 2 games right off the bat, and everybody
Yeah.
gets excited. And that's what you need from a backup quarterback, for someone where, again, if we had a little higher expectations of this team, like this team is trying to make the playoffs and my quarterback tweaks his hamstring or something and can't play for 2 weeks, I need a guy who I have a very good chance is going to win those 2 games. And I think he's kind of that guy. He's someone like when you play blackjack, you win your first 2 hands, you get blackjack 2 times in a row, and you're like, oh, that's great. But the more you play blackjack, the house always wins, and the house always seems to win against Jameis the longer he plays. So we have to hope that we keep our starting quarterback upright. If he needs to go down for a play, a series, a quarter, a half, a game, 2 games, fine. But if it's long term, caveat emptor with him.
There's a really apt comparison to blackjack, and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I really, again, Friday night, I was at a dinner with family. We were, just 10 of us. Had the Gator game on in the background watching, and all of a sudden my phone just started buzz, 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 buzz. I'm like, well, the Gators are up by 28. It's nothing to do with that. What's going on? And I just see like the first 5 or 6 names are friends of mine that are Knowles. I'm like, motherfucker. I can't tell you how angry I was Friday night that we actually got him. But then as soon as I saw that contract, I was just like, all right, this is not any sort of solution at all. So
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, saying this on March, 25th today?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think in the annals of history people are even going to remember that Jameis Winston was a Giant. I mean, maybe this is an omen, you know what I mean? And he comes in week 5 and turns the season around and they win a Super Bowl, right? But I mean, like, really, that's what we're talking about here. This is a perfect backup quarterback situation, the perfect kind of player, the perfect contract for it, the right situation. I'm reminded, honestly, and I want to transition this a little bit, to the bigger scheme here, the offense, the bigger plan, a little bit. I don't want to make this episode too long, but I am reminded that, like, John Mara saying we did everything we could to screw up Daniel Jones. They're doing everything they can to make the cushiest landing spot for the heir apparent to this team. They are setting him up quarterback-wise. These are, for whatever Jameis Winston is as a person, he's been described as a strong locker room presence and a good motivator among his teammates, which is certainly something that I think that a rookie quarterback would want to have around him and could learn from. Russell Wilson also, he's kind of the question mark with that, right? But nevertheless, is still in terms of his personality in the locker room, Russell Wilson. But in the huddle, I think Russell Wilson commands respect. I think Russell Wilson does the work in the film, and the guys trust him on the field to make the right decisions.
It's interesting you say that because I had my browser open. I was trying to look up some information about Russell Wilson I think the salary thing, and on top stories from 2 days ago. Giants Wire via Yahoo report: Giants view Jameis Winston as a better locker room guy than Russell. This is before we signed Russell, so that kind of goes right into your point that he might be, the locker room cut up, the locker room motivator. I don't know if he's a mentor or not. I find it
maybe not necessarily what I was going for in terms of mentor, but just it's certainly something that everyone has their own level of skill sets, right? And you can pick up a little bit of tips from everybody. You know what I mean?
It's all fun and games until the losing starts.
Sure.
So, but a big personality like that doesn't. There's 2 different types of big personalities. Aaron Rodgers is a big personality where it all kind of seems like it sucks inward. Where Jameis Winston has that big personality that seems like it kind of goes outward.
I would say that one is they both attract people to them. One is pulling them towards them, like sucking them in like a black hole. The other's more like a magnet where people want to be around him.
It's like yeah, and for
One's voluntarily attracting people around them. And oddly, the one with the rape application is the one who's getting people. Never mind. Go ahead.
Allegedly.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about how this transforms the offense. Okay,
Sure.
So we
sure.
we went through the roster. We're at 35 minutes here, so we're okay. All right.
Yeah.
We went through this roster, and where the Giants were, piece by piece. And at the time, I think there was no quarterback. They've now since signed 3, from Tommy DeVito to Jameis Winston to Russell Wilson. They have addressed the wide receiver room by adding a number of guys here, with Darius Slayton being the main headliner for 3 years. He's signed through 2027 now. There is a nice opt-out in 2027. This is important, by the way. They've re-signed, they went out and they've grabbed Zach Pascal, Lil Jordan Humphreys, some bigger bodied guys, contested catch guys, possibly, if you will. They've addressed the tight end room by re-signing Chris Manhertz, which was one of our options as well, to a 1-year deal worth very little money, $1.5 million, to fill that role as the guy who is definitely a good blocking tight end, but is capable of catching the ball, running routes. He's usually your Jake Ballard type, someone, or Jake Ballard, Bear Pasco guy,
Yeah.
who's no one's gonna think to cover with anyone of any sort of coverage skills. So there's
Right.
that. They went out and they've addressed the offensive line in droves. They went out and they got Greg Van Roten to fill that pesky open right guard spot on the starting line. We still don't know those details. They might be dependent on a physical. I'm not really sure. But then they got 2 tackles with Stone Forsythe on a 1-year deal worth only $1 million. And James Hudson, I think was his name, through 2026 on a $4 million deal. So they have addressed every facet of the offense in a, would you say, significant way?
In a fortified way. I don't know about it, a significant way, a fortified way.
Sure.
I
Okay.
feel better about if a couple injuries happen that we're not going to go to the total incompetence. I don't still see us as an offense that's going to be lighting up scoreboards and being in the top third to half of offense. But I definitely see that the floor is raised with this offense. I think that's where you have to start. You can't address every problem, all in one shot. And I think the most critical thing was, well, our left tackle went down. We're screwed.
Mm-hmm,
And and I don't think that situation may hurt us as badly, and especially at the quarterback level too. Our quarterback goes down. Oh my God, we're not even going to our backup quarterback. We're going to the third string quarterback. So I think that the fortification is the part that I feel the most comfortable with. I still think that, I'd love if Darius Slayton was our number 3 wide receiver, and Wan'Dell's our 4th. I'd love to have another guy who can really, have twin wide receivers that are real threats.
I mean, I don't. Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
It's just weird to characterize like the slot receiver as wide receiver 4. I mean, like the options are gonna be Neighbors and Wan'Dell are gonna be on the field the most often, and then the third guy rotating in will be Slayton.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, kind of like, and as far as my talent value, my talent level, my skill set, my big play thing is like, as opposed to an X versus a Y versus whatever.
I understand what you're saying, but I also think that some of. Okay, so then this brings it all together. All right. So I'll agree with what you said. Fortified is a much better word, because they haven't really upgraded anything but the quarterback position on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think that there's an upgrade anywhere, right? They've re-signed Chris Manhertz to hold that spot. They've re-signed Greg Van Roten.
Yeah.
They've added offensive line depth. They've added wide receiver depth, and they've re-signed Darius Slayton. The only upgrade, the clear upgrade, is at the quarterback position. The backup quarterback is better than Drew Lock, and the starting quarterback is better than Daniel Jones, and I think that those facts are undeniable.
And to be honest, it was the one position that needed the biggest upgrade the most, and it's the most important position too on the team anyway. So, the quality of the upgrade in this case is probably more important than the quantity of the upgrade.
Might I add that the two upgraded spots, backup quarterback and starting quarterback, are making less money than the backup quarterback last year. Drew Lock was making $1 million more, and Jameis Winston making $10.5 million. I'm sure is less than whatever Daniel Jones was making last year. Was like in the upper 20s, was it not?
Mm-hmm.
So even if Russell Wilson hits all of his escalators, he's still making less than what Daniel Jones made last year, I believe. Again, that might be not true because they released him halfway through the year. And
Make those escalators, and that's money I'm glad to pay.
so now that brings up the question is, how much does the upgrade at the most important position in sports change your opinion on what are fortification moves? How much more how much more do we get from Darius Slayton when it's Russell Wilson throwing him the ball in an offense that will utilize the offensive line that we had last year, but that, we still had Daniel Jones operating the ball? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much does that upgrade all of the other things? Like, the offensive line, in my opinion, from the starting five, looked pretty good early on in the year. It wasn't until people started dropping with injuries that it was pretty clear that they couldn't sustain a single one of their backups. I mean, Josh Azudu is just not a left tackle.
And then you had a third string quarterback also back there too,
Exactly. Yeah.
which throws everything up. I think it increases everything in spades.
Sure, I agree.
You have a veteran quarterback who knows, who can pick up an offense quickly, who can run a full playbook, who, has better accuracy, better arm strength, better all the intangibles. It makes everything better. It's
Yeah.
receivers don't have to worry about where the ball is going to be. If their ball is even going to get there, the frustration level is going to go down. It's all these different things. It's almost incalculable having a legitimate starting quarterback versus, the corpse of one who, probably going to be the same because of injury, and then guys like DeVito who aren't NFL quarterbacks throwing to you.
I am a little worried because this regime thus far, this offseason, done almost every single thing that I said they should do. The only real hiccup that I don't remember ever saying that they should prioritize a big play safety or like a big money safety this year. I was pretty okay with re-signing Jason Pinnock and just punting on the other safety spot or seeing what happened in the draft. You know what I mean? Every other move is pretty much in line, and I've been. I think you and I have spoken off the show about what I feel in my gut is going to happen at the quarterback spot. I've certainly texted other people, like, what do you think is going to happen? And I was just like, I don't know anything. I don't know anybody that works there. I don't know what I would do. There's so many different options. There's a feeling in my gut that they're going to do X and then Y. And I'm not going to say them on this show, but so far, one of them has been done. They've done one of the two things there. So now, if the Giants are absolutely fucking horrible next year, you can all blame me, and I should never be a GM. Because they've done everything I said that they should do.
I wasn't sending your resume to 1929 Giants way anyway, but in spite of your smartness, I honestly think that all of this they're doing now, they have a plan in the draft. I don't know what that plan is, but I don't think any of these moves has anything to do with what they want to do in the draft. I really don't. I think if they have locked in on a quarterback that they want and they love, they're taking him. And I think regardless of who these two quarterbacks would have been, any combination of Aaron Rodgers, Jameis Winston, bringing back Drew Lock, whoever it may have been, I think that, you don't draft for next year. You draft for the next several years. And these guys came in, they're gonna help next year in a variety of different ways. But if they're in love with Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, you know, anybody, they're going to take him. So what do I think is going to happen? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I do know that right now they have the option to take a top 2 quarterback in a class. Nothing is ever guaranteed in this league. You know, they may not have the opportunity next year unless they have to, you know, invest a lot of capital in getting to be in this situation again. And don't think that's not important. That is important. This is not a quote unquote great year for quarterbacks, but something, if they like the guy and they have the opportunity to get him, they're going to get him. And if you put a gun to my head, I think they're drafting a quarterback this year. I don't know
Oh, I
what they're
agree.
going to
Yeah.
do. I definitely think they are. I think all the signs are there. Don't. I've had a lot of discussion with people in the last couple of days about, well, this proves they're not drafting. I'm like, no, this actually proves the reverse to me. They're setting themselves up for short-term transition plan, backup situation, make it, like you said, the runway for the guy. I think it more than likely solidifies they are drafting one. I just don't know who they love, and this is about who you love.
I think it's very interesting going through all the contracts on both sides of the ball. And I don't want to talk about the defense, but just know that this includes the other side of the ball.
Mm.
Everyone is signed, like all these 3-year deals, um, like Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo, Darius Slayton. These are the 3 biggest deals. They're all 3-year deals. They're all really 2-year deals. All of them. And it leads me to believe that think that these guys are safe beyond next year. I think somewhere in my mind, they are not only going to get to choose a quarterback this year, they are given the leeway that this quarterback may not have to play a single down, and that they will still, unless this year is of course, this everything I say about this is subject to a complete disaster. You know what I mean? Like, if the
Yeah,
season's another disaster, I think they're out. But I think that they've sold more than 1 year to John Mara. I really do think that they've sold 2 years to John Mara of survival. I think that they're going to get a quarterback this year, and they don't have to play him, but they will get a chance to play him.
I hate to go back to Gators Corner on this show, but I will. It's a very similar situation to what Florida has with Billy Napier. I think that at this time, last year he was on the hottest of hot seats. And I think that he sold a plan that, look, this is going to take 3 to 4 years to turn around. No matter what the results you see on the field are going to be, my plan takes time. And it was sold. I think the exact same thing has happened here. I absolutely think that. First of all, I don't care what Mara says in public or on Hard Knocks or anything. That's all horseshit to me. I'm growing tired. My patience is thin. People run with that stuff. It means nothing. Of
I
course, people
say
say things
that every day at work.
in the heat of moment. In the heat of the moment. You know how many times
I
I've
say
threatened.
that on a Monday.
You know how many times I've wanted to quit my job in the last 2 weeks just because I hate it. But I don't. But they say things. And I really think that they sold him on a multi-year plan as well. And I think that you know this team on the field, in the front office, was a mess when they got here. It was cap issues. There was an antiquated system of how they evaluated talent. All of these things, and you can't just snap your fingers, and you can't just have a 2-year snapping of fingers. Nothing has gone this team's way to help in this process, or at least placate the fan base that it feels like it's going in the right direction. We've ended up with third string quarterbacks the last couple of years. Guys who have left have become great in other places. All that stuff. You know, on top of a decade before that happening being bad. But you know, I think this front office has this ownership has patience, and I think they bought the plan of patience. And I agree with you.
I I don't really have any other final thoughts. That's kind of like everything I had prepared for this episode. I did want to save off on how the defensive side of the ball and the special teams have uh, been
Yeah,
I'd like to reassess those. I'm not going to do that now. It's way, 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 way too late. So I don't know. Do you have any
but
closing thoughts on this? I gotta say I don't know. I don't know how much I like Russell Wilson for in a vacuum. How excited he's going to make me, as a fan. But in terms of the right thing for this franchise, this is what I would do. This is how I view this. So whether this actually dooms Joe Shane and he only had 1 year to prove it to management or not, this is the correct pathway. I don't think that we're seeing anything yet. Anything yet is indicating to me that this is a panicked front office making moves to save their jobs. I don't see any of that. Do you?
not in the least. I like to kind of piggyback on what we were just saying before. They are working as if they have a much longer lease than 1 year. And what's a panic? A panic is completely overspending in either cap money or a trade, for draft capital, or spending outlandishly for somebody where you your end goal is to win now. I don't think these moves are to win now. I think these moves are to set the table to win. And yeah, I Russell Wilson doesn't excite me for next year. I don't think next year is unfortunately going to be a year I'm going to be very excited about anyway. I don't think most of this fan base is going to be excited till they have something to be excited to be hopeful for. And I think that really only is going to happen once we draft a quarterback. Um, you know, hope or wins, that's what you can sell. And right now we don't have really those things. And so we're kind of, again, we're circling the runway until we get that quarterback. But I don't think we're going to see the complete ineptitude on offense we've had, because we have players that have no business being in the NFL starting for this team anymore. So at least that's something to look forward to, if not be excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not thrilled about offensive line depth. I'm not liking the tackle depth of James Hudson doesn't rile me. Stone Forsythe doesn't rile me. The interior spots, I mean, you have a lot of guesswork between Josh Azudu, I think probably could be a good guard. Don't know. I think Evan Neal probably could be a better guard than tackle. I don't know. Jake Kubis, don't know. Austin Schlottman, don't know. I don't know any of this stuff. I want to know.
Oh,
I want one utility offensive lineman that I know is a plug and play guy that will not embarrass himself. And ideally for me, that's Greg Van Roten. We have him penciled in right now as the starting right guard. I don't know if they're going to make him compete with Evan Neal. I don't even know if Evan Neal's in the picture. But I wouldn't mind an offensive line addition in the draft. You know what I mean? Or
yeah,
even something later.
I think what happens is, the draft is so far away that we get so quick to refreshing our phones with the free agent things. We forget there's a draft coming, and you know, the draft you use to build your roster, that should be the core of your roster. That's for your future, you know.
And
But don't give up on getting
yeah.
guys that can start right away in the draft either. We're gonna have competitions in these. If we draft a guard in the fourth round, believe me, he's gonna be competing to start on this team.
I mean, they also have 2 third-round picks now that they've got
Hmm.
the compensatory pick. They're
You
significant.
package that and trade it.
You could package it and trade. I mean, there are so many options here. We
Yeah,
could see the Giants drafting Abdul Carter at 3, and then packaging up the second and one of the thirds to move back into the first and take Jalen Milroe. You know what I mean? I have no idea. All of those things are certainly possible. They could not do that. I don't know. They could trade down from 3. Who the hell knows?
I think a lot's gonna be predicated on what happens at 2. I think
I
there's I think there's a bunch of plans that they're probably planning out, like scenarios.
I agree with that, and I think there's an A and a B plan that are making up about 80% of the likelihood.
I agree.
I think they're pretty sure about what they're going to do. I mean, picking at 3, you have a lot of, you know, options on the table, so you really can pick what you like best. And I think that there's a plan A and a plan B that really take up most of the likelihood, and then there's backup plans for other scenarios should, X team trade or this team trade or this team sign somebody that completely alters their draft board. You know what I mean?
Hope you guys are all happy with that win in December against the Colts. All you people that were giving me shit, all those people in Tampa were at the bar with me when I was actively rooting against the Giants to win. Hope you're all happy, because meaningless wins do have consequences. And right
I
now,
mean,
again,
I don't know.
this is not the end of the world, but you know something? The decision-making process would have been a lot easier, and potential for paying for something that you really want gets eliminated by
Would they have even
not
gotten
winning.
the first pick for that?
We would have been the number 1 overall pick.
We would have.
We were number 1.
We were number 1 at again. Yeah,
Right. We just keep losing. Yeah.
they would have had to lose everything though to outbeat
Correct.
the Titans.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's more than one win that they had. Didn't they beat the?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. They would have number 1 pick if they lost that game. But that's my point. It's just kind of like, I just want wins. Well, there's consequences, and I think right now, again, this is not. I don't think this isn't a situation we played ourselves out of.
Andrew Luck.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was going to say. It's like I'd normally agree with you, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, at this point, even at that point, we were talking about, it was like Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders. Who's even the better one? I mean, it was even though all the football had been played.
But my point for that was just I wanted to be able to make my decision and have as little impediments to what I want. And now all of a sudden, I had to start doing some, drafting gymnastics to get what I want. So that's all.
I understand what you're saying. And next week we will continue that free agency news, anything new that pops up. We might get some contract details that we don't already have regarding either of those players and some other ones that we talked about. But then I really do want to talk about reassessing the defensive side of the ball, where we still see holes. Like I said, I still see holes in, the offensive line depth. I kind of want to really do that with what's still remaining on the roster and what that means for the draft, if it means anything at all, or what it means for the second wave of free agency. So with that, we will see you guys next week on the usual spots: SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, and YouTube Music, and wherever else you get your podcast stuff. So we will see you guys, I think, next Tuesday, right? Next Tuesday morning, or normal time.
Yeah, I'll be down in Florida for opening weekend. I'll be back Sunday. Monday is we should go Monday night. I don't think there's a Knick game, but yeah, we'll be good.
Okay, so then it'll be Tuesday morning, normal time, normal place. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.